It's 2015 model sell-off at Franklin Toyota. Now is your best time to buy because every 2015 model must be sold.
At Franklin Toyota, save up to $5,000 off the new Prius or get 0 APR for 72 months.
Find it today at Franklin Toyota in Statesboro.
On this week's show, the Georgia Southern Eagles wrap up their 4-game homestand with a couple of games against Louisiana Lafayette and Louisiana Monroe. We'll have highlights and analysis, all that and more, as we welcome you inside the Eagles' Nest. And welcome inside the Eagles' Nest. I'm your host, Josh Aubrey, being joined by Mike Anthony, sports editor and Georgia Southern beat writer for the Statesboro Herald. And Mike, Georgia Southern just wrapped up a 4-game homestand, a couple of wins and a couple of losses for the guys. A win for the women, but a couple of games that they were competitive in. They just got done with splitting at Georgia State, a big win for Kip Drown's crowd, and a tough loss in overtime for the guys. Let's get back to talking a little bit more about the Lafayette. We'll talk about all three of them, but let's begin with the guys who have shown a lot of reasons to be optimistic, and then a couple of times they've shown reasons why you might be a little bit frustrated. But again, you got to remember, this is a very young team.
Well, it's a young team, and with young teams comes a lot of streakiness. We saw that in the 4-game homestand. A couple of hot shooting nights, a couple of very, very cold shooting nights. And the biggest challenge, I think, for this team, not only the youth, but this is just such a different makeup of the team from last year when everybody leaves. Last year you had maybe some more consistent offensive threats and guys like Jelani Hewitt, who you knew exactly what you get from him every night. And then you've got a really good defense, and you just hope that enough scoring was there. This year, the potential's there for scoring. There's some shooters on this team. They can light it up when they get hot. However, sometimes it's just not there. Defensively, I think that this team is slowly getting back near the levels where they were last year, but nowhere near as consistently giving those only 40 and 50-point efforts. They're only allowing 40 or 50 points per game. So I think Mark Byington is coaching this team up to be a defensive-minded team once again. The talent's there offensively. Once this team starts to lock down, limit teams night in, night out, I think you're going to see a lot more wins pile up.
I think last year what impressed me in some of their wins was when they weren't shooting well, they turned up the defense intensity, and they were able to steal a couple of games that maybe you wouldn't think with the way they shot. Now, there's been some games this year like the Lafayette game where they shot 11% from three-point line, and that's tough when a lot of your offense works around being able to hit the outside shot and helping that to open up maybe a little bit of the inside. I think right now they've not really gotten it where they can play a bad to a mediocre game and still pull out a win, which they were able to do last year.
Right, and you saw some of that in the Louisiana Lafayette game last week, where anyone not named Tukey Brown didn't connect on a field goal in the second half for, I believe, the first 6, 7, 8 minutes of the half. Now, that's going to be bad news no matter what kind of team you're throwing out there, but you were able to see them lock it down on defense a little bit, kept that game within reach, which is something that just shouldn't happen when only one guy is scoring. Weren't able to pull that one out, but that's the kind of defensive effort that they'll need every night moving forward. And when those shots start to fall, if that same level of defense is there, then you're going to be able to run away with some games instead of fight just to stay in them.
That's right. One of the more impressive defensive outputs. Unfortunately, we can't always show you the defensive plays. It just doesn't make for as well highlights unless it's a defensive play that leads to a basket. But we're going to show you some highlights nonetheless. Good effort against Monroe. Let's get out and see the women and the men taking on Monroe. The Georgia Southern Eagles wrapping up their homestand Saturday, hosting UL Monroe. The Warhawks with the early lead. Emery Wilson inside for 2. On the other end, Patrice Butler playing beat the clock. She'd finished with a team-high 17. More from Butler, this time off the nice feed from Sierra Butler for 2 more. Trell English Lurie chipping in with 2 on the pull-up jumper here. The Eagles continue to keep it close as Sierra Butler drives in for the layup. Later, English Lurie off the mark, but Brianna Jones there for the rebound and the putback. Eagles within 2, but Monroe able to rebound from a 5-point halftime deficit, and they go on to take this one 50-49. To the guys' game we go, and the Eagles looking to bounce back from their loss to Lafayette, and things look good early on. Jake Alsmiller for 3. Later, it's Mike Hughes penetrating and getting this one to fall. Ike Smith later spinning in the lane and dropping in 2 of his 14 points on the night. Monroe hanging around. Majok Deng with 2 of his 14 points. But the Eagles respond from long range. Hughes 3 more of his team high 15. Later, it's Ike draining the 3 from the other side of the floor. The Eagles by 6. Next up, Hughes penetrates and finds DeVince Boykins for the reverse. Tukey Brown with another solid effort. 12 points to go along with 4 assists. And finally, it's Hughes with the rare 3-pointer and the foul as the Eagles go on for the victory 66-51. Well, Mike, moving on to the Georgia Southern women, and Kip Drown's team has definitely shown some improvement from the team we saw last year. There's been some good moments this week. They pick up a big victory on the road at Georgia State. There were some times in the Lafayette game where they were right there with them. Then they let Lafayette go on a 17-2 run to end the game, which kind of made it difficult there. And then they played Monroe. A little bit up and down. Your thoughts on where Kip Drown's women are at this stage?
Well, this is a team that's definitely taken some baby steps forward. I think personally they'll be there at the end, knocking on the door, that number 8 seed, a chance to move on into the conference tournament, something they weren't able to do last year. Already 2 conference wins, which is as many as the Eagles had all of last season. It should be more, if not for a heartbreaker against Monroe. Led for most of the game, led by 7-8 points at times, but just couldn't quite hold on down at the end. A buzzer beater sinks the Eagles, but give them credit. They bounced back after a 1-3 homestand going up to Georgia State, a place where they finished their regular season on a high note last year. They go back and do it again, winning in convincing fashion, 61-50. Angel McGowan lighting things up, tying a career high with 28 points. As she goes, so go the Eagles. She was hot on Tuesday night. I think that some of the other girls, when they start to pick up her lead, when they start to contribute a little bit more in the scoring column, this is a team that is sound defensively. When they get there offensively, those wins will start to pile up.
All right, well, let's get back and see some highlights from the Louisiana-Lafayette game from the men and the women. Georgia Southern hosting Louisiana Lafayette the 1st of 2 Thursday at Hanner Fieldhouse. Second half action, and Alexis Sams driving for 2 of her team-high 12 points, the only Eagle in double figures. Later, the Eagles go inside to Patrice Butler. Trail English Lurie then driving in for the layup. Kiki Veal answering for the Raging Cajuns with the 3 as they take a 4-point lead. Sams later playing beat the clock, the 30-footer. The Eagles cut the lead to 3. Later, it's Bullock Academy's own Ashley Burke, the rebound and putback. The lead cut to 1. English Lurie outside, burying the 3-pointer. Eagles continue to stay close as Sierra Butler hits the runner. But Lafayette ends the game on a 17-2 run, and they win this one 56-39. To the guys' game we go, and plenty of action. Effingham County's Jay Wright coming up with the layup for the Raging Cajuns. Tukey Brown answering on the other end with the pull-up jumper. More from Tukey. Much of the same right here. He'd finish with 20 points in the game. On the other end, it's NBA prospect Sean Long showing nice range for a 6'11 guy. The Eagles respond with Mike Hughes on the run. And later, it's Coy Simmons inside with the jump hook. We're tied at 12. Jake Alsmiller will then drive in for the rare non-3-point shot. Eagles by 2. Tukey Brown not afraid of the big guys as he drives in for 2 more. Later, Brown off the steal going coast to coast. The Eagles with a 3-point lead. The outside shots not falling for Georgia Southern. They shoot only 11%. The Eagles continue to drive. Devontae Boykins for 2. Mike Hughes later gets the friendly bounce. He finished with 14 points. Ike Smith later drives in the lane and off the pump fake hits the runner. Back to Long we go on the other end. 2 more of his game-high 23. He'd have 17 rebounds as well. The Eagles respond with Alsmiller draining the wide-open three-pointer. But Lafayette, too much, draining a couple of threes themselves. And Georgia Southern would fall in this one by a final count of 74-65. Well, next up for the Eagles, they continue this long road stand. Hopefully they can steal a few victories. Up next is Saturday at Appalachian State. Then it's Thursday, Saturday on the road at Arkansas State and Arkansas Little Rock. So a couple of big games up for the Eagles yet to come. Well, that'll wrap things up for right now. For Mike Anthony, I'm Josh Aubrey. Thanks for joining us. Hope to see you again next week.